Coming up on this episode, I'm brewing a clone of Troegs Mad Elf. Let's get started. Welcome back to Brewing Around the Realm. I am Dave, your amateur brewmaster, and on this episode, I'm brewing up a clone of Troegs Mad Elf. If you've been with the channel for a while, you know about a year ago I tried to clone Troegs Blizzard of Hops. I was still doing partial mash at that time. This year I decided to try to clone Troegs Mad Elf. It is one of my favorite seasonal holiday beers. It's a dark, strong Belgian ale with cherries. I went over to Home Brew Talk, which is usually where I start most of my research. Found a couple of threads over there where they were talking about Mad Elf. Used some of those base recipes. Did some research on the Troegs website on its own. They list all the malts and hops that they use on their beers. So I took the knowledge that I gained from Homebrew Talk and what I gained from Troegs, built a recipe that I felt was going to be really close. Let's go back and take a look at the full brew day for this. Start out with the recipe that I used. I'll get that information up on the screen for you. As always, that information will be over at brewingaroundtherealm.com. I will link to that in the show notes. And let's get started. Today's grain bill is 17.5 pounds of Pilsner malt, 2.5 pounds of Munich Type 1, that is 8.5 level bond, 4 ounces of chocolate malt. There are 2.5 pounds of honey going into the end of the boil today, sterling for our hops, gypsum, baking soda. Of course, we've got Whirlfloc and yeast nutrient, as always. And today's yeast is Belgian Strong Ale. That's Y Yeast 1388. That's good up to 12% alcohol, and that's what we need because we're going to 11% for this beer today. So let's get over to start mashing in. The mash water today is at 165. Ambient grain temperature is 62 degrees, and I've got 20.25 pounds of grain going into 25.3 quarts of water. Target mash temperature for today is 152. Today's going to be one of those days where I just don't hit the mash temperature right. And currently I'm at 144. And I need to be at 152. So what I'll do is I'll take the half gallon out of here at a time and I'll heat it up in the microwave to boiling and dump it back in, and that should get our mash temperature up to where it needs to be. I ended up heating up 2 half-gallon containers of wort to near boiling, and I dumped those in here, and I got the 150, 152. I think that's close enough. Let's get this wrapped up. This is going to be a 75-minute mash time today. I've got the first wort hops in the kettle, and the 75-minute mash time is complete, so let's get this drained out. So after I drained the first runnings, I batch disparged this with 3.85 gallons of 170 degree water, and I'm going to let this sit for 20 minutes. And I'm going to get this over on the stove and we'll get this going. This is a 90-minute boil for today, and there are no extra additions to this. Should be pretty straightforward. With 15 minutes left in the boil, I'm going to put the wort chiller in. And I've got 6 teaspoons of yeast nutrient and a Whirlfloc tablet. That is the end of the boil, so I'm going to dump in 2.5 pounds of honey. Rinse that out really good. I'm going to let this sit here for 15 minutes to make sure the honey is pasteurized properly, and then we'll get to chilling. I got everything chilled down. The post-boil gravity came in at 1092, which was very close. I wanted to get to 1098, And had I boiled for another half an hour, I could have gotten there, but that's really not that big of a deal. I have a 1.5 liter starter of 1388. That's Y yeast Belgian strong ale. I'm going to pitch this whole thing into here. This didn't separate out. I did chill this overnight, but it didn't separate out completely, so I took 500 milliliters out so I could save for next time. And I'm just going to pitch this whole thing in here. And I'm going to definitely put a blow-off tube on this. At 1092, this is definitely going to blow over. And I think it's going to do it rather quickly. So, next stop for this is a secondary fermentation. The first time I'm going to do a secondary fermentation and rack this over on the top of some canned cherries. So let's move forward a couple weeks. Take a look at that. The brew day you just watched occurred on November 10th of 2018. I left that in the fermenter for 2 weeks and did my first secondary. I'd like to show you a little bit of that footage right now. It's been 2 weeks since brew day. This fermented out in about a week, give or take a little bit. I did move it from the closet out into a warmer area where it was about 68 degrees for the last week of fermentation to make sure this cleaned up properly. It's time to get our cherries. I'm going to rack this into a freshly sanitized fermenter, which I have sitting over here on the counter. First step is to get our cherries ready. I'm going to puree those in the blender. So let's get started on that. Alright, here I've got the cherries. I have 2 cans of red tart cherries and 2 cans of dark sweet cherries. I'm going to dump these into the blender. I have sanitized the blender just to be sure. Use the liquid and all. Dumping it into here. I think I'll do 2 cans at a time. I'm going to use the puree fermenter here. Got the fully sanitized fermenter, and I'm just going to dump these in. Check the gravity on this, and it came in at 11 bricks. So that gives us a ABV of 9.7%, which is about what I thought we were going to get. I thought we were going to get around 10, considering the target gravity was 1098, and I only reached 1090. So I'm very happy with that. I'm going to rack this into the other fermenter with the cherries, and I'm actually going to make sure that I get some of the yeast in there because I want to get a secondary fermentation. I transferred that into the fermenter, and this looks pretty good. I'm going to set this over on the shelf for another 2 weeks, and then I'll get this into the keg. So I still got a month to go before this is ready, but hopefully we'll be ready by Christmas time. That was the first time I had ever put a beer into a secondary fermenter. I really felt that I needed to do that. I wanted to get that off the yeast cake, get the cherries in there, and make sure that those two things were together, and I left that in there for a total of 2 weeks. I was a little bit concerned. I made sure that I sanitized everything with Star San and made sure all the tubing and everything that went into that beer was sanitized. That stayed in the secondary fermenter for another 2 weeks before I kegged that on December 9th of 2018. So that was just about a month total in fermentation time. That went into the keg, and I had the first beer out of that keg right before Christmas. As I stand here right now, it is January 6th. I'm going to take you over to the table. I'm going to pour out an actual Troegs Mad Elf. I'm going to get a Mad Elf clone out of the keg. I'm going to compare the two and give you a little bit of information of what I've changed for next time. On the right side of the frame here, I have the fresh bottle of Mad Elf, and the left side of the frame I have the homebrew version. The head retention on these is about the same. Tried to pour both of these at roughly the same time, so they looked pretty similar. The first thing you're going to notice is that the homebrew version is several shades darker. The color on these is basically the same. I would probably make some changes to this in order to get it to be slightly lighter in color. I think that the best option here would be to use light Munich instead of dark Munich. But let me get a taste of the regular Mad Elf first. That is just an amazing beer. You get the cherry flavor, the Belgian esters. There's a nice malt backbone to that. I really enjoy this. This is one of my favorite seasonal beers. The homebrew, and see, these are both about the same on clarity, except for the darkness on this. It would show a little bit clearer on camera if it wasn't quite so dark. Let me take a taste. I mean, really, those are very, very close. The other thing I would change in this is to add more cherry flavor. This is slightly lacking in cherry flavor, and I would put 3 cans of each of the tart and sweet cherries into this to make up 6 cans. I think that would make this much closer to the traditional Mad Elf direct from the bottle. If you've never had Mad Elf, I would definitely go ahead and brew a batch of this up. This is my favorite winter seasonal beer. Make the changes I've recommended here, and I think you'll be very happy. Make sure you stop over at brewingaroundtherealm.com to pick up the recipe for this. I will have the full recipe along with some of the research I did on this linked on the website in the story for this beer. And if you're looking to get the Beer XML file, I'll have that for you too. I appreciate that you've taken the time out of your day to watch this video. I know you have a lot of choices when it comes to watching videos on YouTube, and I definitely appreciate the fact that you've taken the time out of your day to watch this one. Please remember to like and share this video. If you've watched more than a couple of videos on the channel, make sure you click that subscribe button and click the notification button so you're alerted to all the videos I upload on a regular basis. Till next time, remember, I make all the brewing mistakes so you don't have to.